Next, as we mark our 10th anniversary, we open our archives in November of 2004 and hear the press conference held by Barack Obama on the day he left the Illinois Legislature, just days after he was elected to the U.S. Senate. We hear his thoughts on the national issues of 2004 and what he said when asked if he would run for president in 2008. This runs about 35 minutes.
Is your family going to stay living in Chicago or move with you to Washington?
We don't know. What I'm going to do is commute for the first 6 months because we wouldn't want to take the kids out of school. And we'll make a decision after that first 6 months. My priority will be where can I spend the most time with my children and make sure that my wife has a good base of support, even as I'm supporting the people of Illinois.
And do you know if she plans on staying at the position at the University of Chicago Hospital?
You know, all those things are, it's too early for us to tell.
Are both kids in school, by the way?
Yes.
Senator, do you have a wish list for what committees in the Senate you would wish to be on?
We've been talking about this, and you know, the problem we have right now is because the Democrats took a hit in this past election. It's not clear how many seats are going to be available on various committees because the Democrats may actually lose a seat on each committee. The ratios are going to change. So, you know, there are some wonderful committees like the Finance Committee, for example, which is the equivalent of Ways and Means on the Senate side, which would be very useful for me to have in terms of getting stuff done for the people of Illinois. But it may be that with us losing a seat, that there just aren't enough seats there.
Have you talked to Senator Durbin about a seat on the Judiciary Committee? I know there's kind of a tradition that usually don't have two senators from the same state on that.
And as a consequence of that, Judiciary is probably not a committee that I'm going to be actively seeking.
Have you heard anything from Alan Keyes?
No.
Not one phone call, not one postcard, nothing?
No postcards.
What are your thoughts on it? I mean, he hasn't called to concede or congratulate or anything.
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Keyes made his position pretty clear in a radio interview after the election. His view was that this is a battle between good and evil, and you know, he is. I forget the exact quote, but I think he said that it would be a disingenuous for him to congratulate me. You know, obviously, Mr. Keyes is, I think, unique in this regard. Generally, the Republican Party has been very gracious. You know, President Bush called, John McCain called, Bill Frist called, you know, all the following day. And so, since they actually hold formal positions in government, and I will have to be working with them, I'm more concerned, I think, about establishing good relationships with them.
What did the president say, Barack, when he called?
You know, we ended up having a nice conversation. It was about a 7-8 minute conversation, and he had just finished his press conference the day after the election. He congratulated me on my victory. We both agreed that we had married up. He had kind words to say about Mayor Daley, and I told him that his admiration for the mayor was reciprocated because I know the mayor actually thinks well of the president, and we talked about the possibilities of working together on issues. And I mentioned to him that his campaign manager was actually a classmate of mine at Harvard, and that.
Showed me his note, I remember that.
Yeah,
After the speech.
right. It was very nice of him. So,
And he's quoted in the New York Times today saying you are the Democrat they're going to reach out to. So what specifically do you envision working with them on?
well, I think that there are opportunities in a variety of areas. I think one area would be tax reform. The president says this is important. I think tax reform should be a high priority. As I mentioned yesterday when I was interviewed on some of the Sunday morning talk shows, if reform means closing tax loopholes, simplifying the system, making it easier for a working family to file a child tax credit and an earned income tax credit and some other credits all on one line, and the form is simplified, then those are the kinds of things that I'd be fully supportive of. If what's being termed tax reform turns out just to be a move to a national sales tax, for example, then I would be resistant, because I think that it is very important that we not make the tax system more regressive than it already is. So part of it's going to depend on what the president's agenda is. I think on the health care front, there should be some areas where we can find common ground. Obviously, the president's top priority is going to be medical malpractice, liability. That's what he already has said. But if we're going to get a handle on health care costs, there has to be some other items on the menu. And so my hope would be that he considers moving more aggressively on the use of medical technology to drive down costs. He mentioned during the debates that he was concerned about some of the difficulties in moving generic prescription drugs to market, and that would be an area that we would agree on. I think that.
What specifically there?
Well, he wasn't specific about it, but us examining our patent laws, figuring out what sort of procedures are in place that currently are preventing generics from moving to market, not because they're unsafe, but because.
I thought you meant, some of the AIDS activists have said that the rules are too strict for testing these drugs.
No,
they
no,
should
no.
be put out in the market sooner than
No,
that.
no. I'm referring to the hoops that drug companies currently engage in.
The color of the pill, they get a new patent, all that crap.
Exactly. So those would be examples of areas where, I would hope we would be able to work together. Now, keep in mind, I'm saying this with the very clear understanding that as the 99th ranked member of the Senate, I'm not going to be setting the agenda. My job is to represent Illinois effectively, to work with the Democratic leadership, including, happily, Dick Durbin, and to be a constructive voice in these debates. I don't expect to be stirring the ship.
Do you realistically see an opportunity for bipartisan compromise, or is it going to be they'll work with the Democrats as long as you're giving the majority most of what they want, and the rest of the time it's just filibuster and try to block what you can't live with?
I think it'll be interesting to find out. The one thing that I'm hopeful about is that the president is in his second term. He will never run for political office again. And what you'd like to think is that the president is now more concerned with his legacy than he is with politics. That may present an opportunity in which the president says, I want to get some things done, and to get those things done, let me see if we can arrive at compromise.
Technically speaking, are you and Senator Durbin going to have anything to do with nominating judges and U.S. attorneys if there are vacancies, or is that
Yes.
all as Democrats? Or
Well, no. I mean, it goes to Denny Hastert, but my understanding is that traditionally there's been some relationship that's been worked between the Republicans and the Democrats, so that the Democrats get one out of every 4 appointments. Now, whether that tradition continues or not, it did continue under Fitzgerald and Durbin. Whether Speaker Hastert is interested in continuing that is probably something he'll have to determine in consultation with Senator Durbin.
Can I ask why you ruled out the Hillary Barack ticket for 08? Why have you were quoted, first I should ask, you were quoted in the paper the other day.
It is absolutely accurate.
So why have you ruled that out, running nationally?
I am a believer in knowing what you're doing when you apply for a job. And I think that if I were to seriously consider running on a national ticket, I would essentially have to start now before having served a day in the Senate. Now, there are some people who might be comfortable doing that, but I'm not one of those people.
Senator, a year ago, you were going around giving interviews, arriving by yourself, no entourage.
Right.
Now you're arguably the hottest political ticket in the nation. Probably will be the most covered freshman senator since Bobby Kennedy. On a personal standpoint, just what's this like?
I have not taken the hype too seriously, and I don't know why that is exactly. I think it has to do with the fact that the Springfield press corps has beaten me down so much over the last 8 years that any cockiness that I might have had was thoroughly cured during my tenure here. Seriously, when you've worked in relative obscurity for a long period of time, I think you make a decision that you're in this to actually get something accomplished as opposed to seeking out the limelight, because this has not been a good place for the limelight. And particularly when I was in the minority, McKinney was still polite to me, but I don't think Bernie ever talked to me. So as a consequence, I guess you have a pretty clear sense of how fickle celebrity culture is. I think I may have mentioned this to somebody. I got my book went on the New York Times bestseller list, and I was feeling pretty good about that until I looked on the hardcover list, and the one that was shooting up the fastest was Jenna Jameson's How to Make Love Like a Porn Star, which gave you some sense of the degree to which celebrity and worthiness don't always go hand in hand in this culture. So it's just not something that I take that seriously.
You said been unrealistic expectations. Do you think thrust upon you because of this rapid rise in celebrity?
I'm not worried about the expectations of people outside of Illinois, and I trust the voters of Illinois that they have a good sense of what to expect from me. I think that the voters of Illinois expect me to work really hard, expect me to be responsive, to have a good constituent service office, to thoughtfully consider legislation that comes before me, to learn the ropes, not embarrass them, and to reflect the values of the state. And if I do that, then I think the voters are going to feel good, and that I will have met their expectations. And if I do that, then I will feel good because I will have met my expectations.
Senator Fitzgerald today said the big thing that hit him 6 years ago was he really had no time family-wise. He didn't know what was coming. Do you think you know what was coming, or are you fearful now of?
No, that is the thing that I'm most concerned about. Where this celebrity status comes into play, and where I'm most concerned about it coming into play, is it will ratchet up the demands on my time, and it will require me to say no a lot.
Do you have any feeling as to why? I think a lot of Republicans are even Republican voters responding to your comments.
Right.
Do you have a sense as to why people are responding to what you're saying?
I was asked yesterday on Russert what I meant in my speech when I said there are no red states, no blue states. And I'm not sure I completely captured what I meant when I tried to explain it to him. I think that the way politics has been working in recent memory is that both parties do their best to caricature the other side. And so the Republicans caricature the liberals as family-hating, religion-hating, soft on crime, soft on defense, spend all your money and on programs that don't work. And then the Democrats try to characterize the Republicans as intolerant, small-minded, saber-rattling protectors of the wealthy, right? And in each election, the question is, who's been more successful in selling their caricature? Right? And so in this election, the Republicans were more successful at caricaturing John Kerry than John Kerry was at caricaturing George Bush. And it just strikes me that the slogans and the caricatures don't capture the reality of people's lives. That's not how they understand their lives. You know, they don't walk around with these ideological grids in their heads. They're not thinking in terms of, am I conservative, am I liberal? There's a segment of the vote, 10% on one side and 10% on the other, that thinks that way, but the vast majority of people, I think, are trying to figure out, how do I save for my kid's college education and raise my kid with some good values?
Why did you appear on the morning shows this weekend, and why are you thinking about the possibility of a book when that's just going to kind of add fuel to this inflated set of expectations for you? Aren't you feeding that to some degree?
Well, you know, I mean, we had over 100 requests, you know, and we accepted 2. Yeah, I mean, at some point, you know, I have to walk the line of not being rude and also recognizing I'm a public figure with the desire also not to appear presumptuous. And, you know, we're going to do the best we can kind of navigating that. Carol, you get the last word.
Thank you. 4 or 5 times, just walking in the halls, people were remarking to one another or to me, there's history being made here today. To what degree do you feel the honor, and to what degree do you feel the burden of being seen as someone who is making history?
You know, I don't think about it in those terms. I think if I was the first African American ever to be elected to the U.S. Senate, I might feel more of that burden.
I think they're talking about, and I hear it all the time, and I know you do too, they see you as being the first African American president. That's really what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's flattering, Carol. It's not something that I'm feeling right now. What I'm...
Would you like them to stop?
Well, he wouldn't go that.
I mean, it doesn't bother me because I don't feel that burden. You know, I know how hard it is to legislate, especially from the posture of the minority party. I mean, I went through 6 years where I could not get a bill out of committee, right? And what you have to do to be effective in that role is to be opportunistic and to find areas in which there's already work being done and tell leadership you're willing to pick up the bucket and carry the water. And so I know what I'm looking forward to in the next 6 years. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be easy. And I think that since that weighs so heavily on my mind, since I know exactly what it takes to be an effective legislator in a body that is even more partisan and prone to gridlock than the Illinois Senate is, that is all-consuming in terms of how I think about these issues.
But you can comment on 150. Look, the guy who ran for president supposedly did nothing for 20 years in the Senate and only lost the presidency by 150,000 votes in one state. So theoretically, you could hang around for 20 years, you'd be fine.
Can I ask you, in fairness?
I'm not planning to hang around 20 years and get nothing done.
Yeah, there's one question. Your predecessor stood up here and said
He was very proud of having single-handedly blocked O'Hare, he said. And he said that it's $15 billion for only 125,000 extra operations. It's going to be a waste of money. And yet you mentioned it as one of your top priorities whenever I hear you.
I think O'Hare has to be renovated in order for us to maintain our position as the premier transportation hub in the nation. Now, I do not pretend to be up on all the details of the configurations and the costs and what's holding things up and the FAA. All those are issues that I'm going to have to bone up on over the next few months. What I do know is that every time that a flight is turned away from O'Hare because of the current caps, the economy of Illinois is losing money. And that's not sensible. And so I think it's important for us, if there are ways that we can improve the existing plan, and if that's still possible in a timely fashion, then I think we should do so. But I think it is absolutely critical that we get this thing moving.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois. If you have any comments or questions on our programming, please email us at illinoischannel@aol.com. Or if you have any questions about the Illinois Channel, please visit our website at www.illinoischannel.org.